Hey everyone, it's Karn again. Welcome to the season 2 of the Now What podcast, a podcast focused on young adults with epilepsy and the problems they face. As always, I'm an advisor to the Cameron Boyce Foundation, and TCBF honors Cameron's legacy by empowering young adults living with epilepsy through education, support, and community while working to end SUDEP. These episodes and this season and this show is only possible because of our sponsor, UCB. UCB, thank you so much. I have a Christmas list. I'll be sending that your way. Please fulfill it. I'd appreciate it. As always, I'm saying as always a lot, aren't I? But it's okay. You're still here. Each week, we're going to discuss an important topic related to epilepsy and young adults. And this week, we have a double feature. We're going to bring on our community advisory board over the next 2 episodes to be our guests and talk about a subject that they picked. And the subject they chose was the lack of community in the epilepsy space, which I thought was really unique because we normally talk about community, like how we've created it, how it exists, and having more of it, but kind of getting to the root of like why it doesn't exist. Our community advisory board members that will be joining are Madison Parham, Mia Randell, Katie Price, and Serina Lall. Okay, so I'm gonna stop talking and I'm gonna hand it over to them. Bye guys. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us on the Now What podcast. I know there's a few of us here, so I'd love to go around. If you could introduce yourselves, how old you are, and when you were diagnosed with epilepsy.
Hi, I'm Madison. I'm 29 years old, and I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 11.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm 24 years old, and I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 12.
So my name is Serina. I'm 26, and I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 15.
I'm Mia. I'm 26, and I started having seizures at 9, but I was diagnosed with epilepsy at 19.
Okay, so you guys actually picked the topic for this episode, which was, we've talked a lot about community at the foundation, and it's one of the main pillars of the work that we do. But we don't talk a lot about the lack of community that continues to exist in this space. So I want to throw it over to you guys as to why you think it's hard to create or find the community in the epilepsy space.
I can start. I would say probably the biggest factor is the stigma. People, even though epilepsy is not rare at all, but you hardly know you meet people with it, but you don't know you're meeting people with epilepsy because no one talks about it. They're afraid to bring it up. They're worried it's either going to jeopardize their job. It's going to make people treat them differently. It's going to make, their friends or family treat them differently. So no one talks about it. So you don't know. And so it's hard to form a community when the people in that community are afraid to speak up. So I think, before I joined the foundation, I was really only speaking to people one-on-one because they were reaching out to me because I knew I was an advocate and they were wanting advice, but I never had like a group or somewhere I could go to get advice from other people. It was just people coming to me. And so I think that's what makes the Cameron Boyce Foundation so different from other foundations, because other foundations raise money or raise awareness, which is equally important. But, through the young adult Facebook group, through the adult Facebook group, through our board, there's actually like the coming together of people who have epilepsy and finding that support in each other, opposed to just only having your doctor or your therapist or, your mom or dad who don't have epilepsy to talk to.
I think that's a good point. I think for me, it always felt kind of taboo because I started having seizures when I was in middle school, and that's a very formative time of your life where you're making friends, you're learning social skills, and I had a seizure at school in front of the classroom, filled with a lot of my friends. And when I went back to school the next day, they looked at me like I was a ticking time bomb. And I got really paranoid about that. And then my outside of school friend group, my soccer team, I had a seizure at soccer camp. They all looked at me the exact same way. And again, that paranoia just kept building up of these people are looking at me like I'm a freak. And so I already felt like I was a bit of a spectacle. And so I didn't want to become more of a spectacle by bringing it up and talking about it. And so the way I just kind of navigated any issues that arose, or if I was curious about anything, I would just get online and look up, hey, do other people experience this? Do other people experience that? And a lot of the times you would just find resources like the Epilepsy Foundation where doctors are telling you like, hey, this is normal. Hey, this is not normal. And that's great, but it's not the same as getting to talk to somebody else who is going through the same thing you're going through I always felt like anytime I would run into somebody that would be like, yeah, I've had seizures, it's like, I'd be like, oh my gosh, me too. And you kind of get to build this sense of community that I just never really felt until I found, the Cameron Boyce Foundation, the Facebook group. I've been on there and I've seen other people asking questions that I had when I first started having seizures. I told my mom, I was like, you need to join, because she had so many questions. When I first started having seizures, she didn't know the answers to, she didn't know what to do. And I see moms on there now asking the same questions that she had to figure out. And, I've kind of been able to help answer some of those questions, or at least give my feedback or advice. And, I think it's been cool to kind of see that evolve, but I do think the taboo-ness around it kind of made it really difficult for me at first.
Yeah, so epilepsy can be a really isolating condition. And I live in a really small town, so there isn't much of a community anyways. And because it's so isolating, you get into a stage where you're so sad and you just kind of want to be by yourself. And it's really hard to make that move when you're in a state of sadness. So then you kind of end up feeling more sad. So there isn't really a sense of community. That's how I felt when I moved out and went to uni. I'm back living at home now with my family, which I'm grateful for. But when you're thrown into situations that you're not used to, it can be really difficult and really hard. But I'm grateful for the Cameron Boyce Foundation for bringing out a platform, the Facebook groups. I didn't have the Facebook group when I was diagnosed with epilepsy because of my age and because this Facebook group just wasn't a thing. So I think it's a great thing.
So my experience was, I remember very vividly going to, the pediatrician, and they were like, oh, you've been diagnosed with epilepsy. And you hear the word diagnose and your mind instantly thinks the worst, And I remember my mum not knowing what my type of epilepsy was. And I honestly just thought it was something made up, because I've never heard anyone speak about epilepsy. And then so, I had to educate myself. There was no local support groups. It was just me at 12 years old. That's when I started high school as well, on this brand new medication that had all these different side effects. Going into high school, having to navigate all these new social cliques and everything, and the new amount of workload. And it was just so tiring. And with my case in particular, I was having absent seizures, and it was really hard because obviously I wasn't aware I was having these absent seizures. And when I used to come to from them, a lot of people, a lot of my memories around them weren't so great. I remember playing sport, like I play netball, and had an absent seizure on court, and my absent seizure caused the team to lose the ball. And so then I had everyone yelling at me because it was a grand final, and it felt so isolating. Like I felt so bad. And even when I, grew out of that and had my grand mal seizure, I just felt so isolated. I felt like I had no one to talk to about it. And honestly, my first introduction to a community was the Cameron Boyce Foundation, because I joined the Facebook group and I was like, oh, okay, there's people in here that are like me, that have these similar experiences. And, this foundation has just brought so much confidence out in me in terms of just even speaking about epilepsy and being an advocate for epilepsy. Through this foundation, like, I've met people that I call like really good friends now, which is really great. And, I love being able to also be in those community groups and, as, Madison said, like, help people out with the questions they have, because, I wish someone had done that for me. I wish someone had done that for my mum and my dad. So yeah, it's really important that there is advocacy around epilepsy and that there is a community within it, because it makes life easier for those living with epilepsy, and it helps us all support each other.
Yeah. How'd you guys do it? Because you you all have described in a really beautiful way having some form of contact with community, or fostering it in an intimate or in a larger way. And I guess, like, if someone's listening to this and they're curious to know how they do that, how did you guys do it? Did you feel like it was first in person, or was it first through social media? Yeah, I'm kind of like curious to know what that entry point was, and also like not only how you began, but what you felt was the most like helpful for your journey with epilepsy.
I think personally it was a little bit of both. I remember making so as I mentioned, I started having seizures at 9 and then diagnosed at 19. So there was like it was 10 years there. And when I was officially diagnosed, I remember making the conscious choice of, I'm going to talk about this. I don't want to hide it. I understand why people have that feeling. And when I was going through it before I was diagnosed, I did experience like that feeling of shame and wanting to hide. But when I got diagnosed, I made that decision. I'm going to speak about this. I'm, not going to be afraid. And through making that choice, it meant both through social media and my real life, because people saw that I was talking about it, they wanted to talk to me about it. So people would come up to me and be, hey, my brother has epilepsy. He doesn't have anyone to talk to. Can he talk to you about it? Hey, I have epilepsy. I just got diagnosed. Can I have your number? Can we talk about it? Can we FaceTime sometime? And just because I would post about it on my Instagram, or I would tell my family, you guys can talk about it. You have permission to talk about it. Like, I want you actually to talk about it. Then my family would come to me and be like, oh, my mom would be like, oh, my friend's son has it. Can she ask you some questions? And it just like spreads out through other people knowing I have it, and then them meeting people who have it, because so many people do have it. Once they see that you're comfortable, it creates that chain reaction, and then they become comfortable, and then it just keeps going. And then I think the biggest thing was the Cameron Boyce Foundation. I mean, there are so many people through the foundation that like Katie said, I call like true great friends. When I went to speak at an event for the Cameron Boyce Foundation, the first person I called after was Katie, because I was so excited to talk to her about it. And, I have so many friends who I talk to my epilepsy about, and they, are great friends and can listen. But it's different having friends who have epilepsy and can understand. And there's just that different level there. So it can start through the Facebook group and finding someone in that group who has similar type of epilepsy to you or lives near you, or it can start by being on the board, or just finding, a connection with someone who, if they're on the great group, they probably feel comfortable talking about it and you feel comfortable talking about it. And there's a different level of connection when someone actually knows what you're going through because they go through it as well.
Yeah. I found, like I said, when I was younger, I mean, it was basically just me figuring it out with my mom and my dad. And, we had things, I had a baby monitor next to my bed from the age of like 10 to the time I graduated high school. And I always thought, like, this is weird. Is it weird? I don't know, maybe. And then, when I saw the Cameron Boyce Foundation start the community thread on Facebook, I joined it, and I noticed some other people making comments about stuff like that, things that could help, know if their child's having a seizure or not. And I was like, maybe my mom was on to something. And so, finding that and seeing so many people sharing tips with each other, or explaining like, hey, this medicine had these kind of side effects on me too. Like, you're not crazy. We tried these things and these things worked. It's kind of cool to like be a part of that and see everybody sharing their ideas. Because, not having a community makes it a lot more difficult. And so for that to be there for people now to join and interact with, and, you don't even necessarily have to make a post or comment on someone else's post. You can read other people's comments, and maybe that could help you out. And then maybe one day you get bold enough to give advice yourself that could end up helping someone. And so I think it's a really great tool.
Yeah, I have a burner TikTok where I like perceive all of the internet through, and I'm like, even on that, it doesn't even have my name, my number, or anything attached to it. I am so nervous about posting or like commenting through that. Like, even if it's like if it's like a recipe TikTok, and I'm like, can I use apples instead of pears? Like, I'm too scared to comment.
Yeah, find your burner, Karin.
Literally. I think the only person I follow is Alice Elm Design. the the lady who goes around and who's like, she's an interior designer, and she's like, this room has been decorated with the colors of silver and neon orange, and you're like, hell yeah, Alice.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, because I feel like when you're the person that is living with the diagnosis, you spend your entire life surprising people and educating people. And I'm curious to know, like Katie, Serina, has anyone that has epilepsy learning about their journey surprised you in some way? Or you've learned something new from hearing someone else's perspective?
I think for me, it's just that I come from a background where there's like no epilepsy, like no history of epilepsy whatsoever. So just hearing other stories in general, like I have a different perception of epilepsy than someone else would. Everyone with epilepsy has a different story. So when I speak to someone with epilepsy, like I'm always learning new things as well. So I think that's what I find interesting. Like I feel like I'm always learning something. Every day is school day. So yeah.
For me, like my first introduction to, I would say, other people having epilepsy was unfortunately through Cameron's passing. And, when the foundation was started, I was like, oh, okay, so there's actually so many more people that live with this. It's not just me, because, having epilepsy, sometimes it can feel it's you versus the world. And that was the biggest thing for me. And then, I joined the support group and I would answer questions, or I would just hide in there. And then when the community advisory board came together, I was like, great, there's so many more people who have epilepsy, and like, yay, new friends I can talk to, like my experiences about it. And it's also been really refreshing because now I feel like I've gotten more confident in reaching out to other people, because I know myself, like I would have loved when I first initially posted about it on my private social media for someone to be like, oh, hey, like, I know what you're going through. Like my cousin has epilepsy. And so, on TikTok, I see people post about their epilepsy. And so I'll message them and be like, oh, hey, like my name's Katie. I have epilepsy too. Like, hey, like just curious. I wanted to ask a question, or like if you ever need someone, I'm here. And it's just given me the more confidence to reach out to people and be like, hey, you're not alone in this. And so it's really surprising finding people who also live with epilepsy and, getting to talk about those shared experiences. And, a lot of those shared experiences aren't positive ones given the nature of epilepsy, but then, finding the light or being able to relate to each other in that kind of level is sort of special in a way, because like Mia said, like you can always go and talk to your friends outside of the foundation about it and be like, hey, this happened to me, but they're never going to really truly understand. So yeah, like it was really great, like after the advisory board was formed, being able to talk to everyone and get to hear everyone's stories. And then now, like I've created these great relationships with people that it goes beyond epilepsy, but that was always the core of our friendship, which was really lovely.
Yeah. How has community helped you guys through a major moment, or a moment of crisis, and not just exclusively to the foundation, but like I know sometimes when I'm in therapy, my therapist will be like, okay, what are we going to do in this situation? How would you ask Sophie to help you in this situation? And I feel like a child, because I'll be like, I would call Sophie and I would tell her about my problem or whatever it might be. And I'm curious, for someone, like, how does someone else, if they find other people that have epilepsy and they connect with them, how do they, utilize that community for support? And how have you guys utilized that community for support?
I would say one of the biggest moments for me that the community really helped was when in 2021, when I got COVID, one of my medications that had been helping stop one of my seizure types stopped working. And it was really scary. I was having massive seizures every night. I was like, what happened? Why isn't this medication working anymore? It's been working for years. And I didn't know what to do. Couldn't get an appointment with my doctor. Like everything was just like crumbling in on me. So I went to the Facebook group. I was like, hey, is anyone else on this medication? experiencing this if they got COVID, or is anyone who has epilepsy who got COVID experiencing their medication stopped working? And immediately I got so many responses of people being like, that happened to me. I got COVID, my seizures are worse. I got COVID, that medication stopped working. And it's like, when I went to my doctor, they're like, oh, we don't know. COVID is still so new, or we haven't done testing, or the medication. You know, they couldn't give me a real answer because it's science, it's the medical field. They can only give, you know, scientific answers. And so I was so confused and frustrated. And the community really helped me feel validated and not so scared. I had a path now of being like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. This is happening to other people. Now I just need to shift my mindset and find a game plan and what to do. And it was just finding that validation and just, you know, you can't go to your doctor for everything. You know, they can help, but they can't always give you the advice you need just because they have those constrictions. And so, or constraints. So that was really helpful for me, finding that validation. And then when I started trying new medications, getting advice, being like, hey, did anyone experience these side effects and how did you handle them? Because it was new for me to try new medications. And so it was really just great to have those kind of people rally around you and not feel so alone in what you're going through. Because as Serina said, it is really isolating to go through it.
Yeah, both fortunately and unfortunately for me. Fortunately, I've gone over a decade without having a seizure. I've been controlled by medication for a long time now. So I found the Cameron Boyce Foundation after I was controlled by medication. So I haven't actively had a seizure while I've been a part of this. But, you know, unfortunately, that left me with just the people around me as my community when I was actively having seizures. But I will say, I don't know if it's because I had the seizure at school. I don't know if it kind of freaked them out a little bit, but they actually ended up becoming really good to work with. One of my fears was playing travel soccer. You go to these tournaments on the weekends and you'll play 4 soccer games in 2 days, and you got to wake up and go to school the next morning. And, you know, I found that if I didn't get a lot of sleep, if I didn't get a lot of rest, I would have a seizure. And so my school kind of became okay with like, you can just come in after lunch, or if you have to miss Monday, like, it's okay. Like, they didn't hold stuff like that against me. They let me take a nap on the couch in the teacher's break room one day because I was kind of starting to feel weird. They just became really helpful and really supportive of anything that I needed to make me feel better or safer. And all of the rules of like, well, you can only miss so many days, and once you get a certain amount of like late to class or whatever, all of that just kind of went out the window with me because I think they understood what I was dealing with, and they were really helpful in supporting me. And I think that's something that I've kind of took for granted as I was going through it. But now looking back on it, it helped me maintain as much normalcy as I could as a child.
Mm. That's really beautiful.
I would say for me, the forums online helped me like through school. So I was diagnosed at a critical point in my life where I was doing my exams and then going on to uni. So like searching for any advice I could get regarding like any help with my exams, if I could get a separate room. And there were forums telling me that I could get extra time, if I could get a written note from my doctor or something. I could get disability allowance that would help me, which is specific to the UK. So those really helped me, and they were pretty much a lifesaver. And I like to give that advice back out to people who are struggling with the same thing. And I think that's a learning curve for me.
And for me, I honestly, well, not when I was first diagnosed, but a bit later in life when I did have like my grand mal seizure, I honestly turned to the internet. And obviously we all know the internet can be a scary place and there's a lot of misinformation. But, you know, I was going to my local like Epilepsy Australia Foundation and I was looking at all the resources and guides that they had. And then the Cameron Boyce Foundation started releasing their own. And so I started reading up. I was trying to educate myself as much as possible on everything. And I feel there was experience once. So my sister, who's older than me, she also has epilepsy. And out of the 4 siblings, so 4 girls, only me and her have epilepsy. And I remember it was early one morning here, she had a seizure. So I was really scared because I'm not usually on the other end of that. I'm usually the one having the seizures. And my first instinct, other than obviously making sure that she was okay and my parents were with her, is that I picked up my phone and I messaged our community advisory board for the Cameron Boyce Foundation. And I said, hey guys, sorry, low-key freaking out right now. My sister's having a seizure. What can I do or say to help her through this? Because obviously being that person that has a seizure, obviously people do that to you. But again, being on the other end of that, I'm like, well, what do I say? What do I do? And instantly people were replying back being like, well, just comfort her. Obviously this is really scary. We don't what caused the seizure. There's all these questions. Just stay with her and remind her that she's loved and she's cared for. And when that happened, I honestly was just so happy because I was like, not only are these people with epilepsy saying it, just the community, the fact that I felt comfortable enough to message about 15 people that I barely know or I've never met in real life. And I'm like, hey guys, what do I do? The fact that I felt comfortable and that one of my first instincts was to turn to this community was really important for me. And yeah, as I said before, the community that's developed from this is amazing. Mia's become really one of my close friends, and sometimes after a hard day, I work as a teacher. After a hard day, I'll come home and I'll get on WhatsApp and I'll voice memo, and I said, all right, here's what happens today being a teacher in a primary school, and I'll just rant, and it's been great having that community.
Yeah, it's we've talked about in a previous episode about shame in epilepsy, and I think that from all of your experiences, it's really easy to shut down and to want to become more private. And Madison, with your experience, it's you're surrounded by a bunch of your peers who are seemingly scared, and I'm sure in your head you're kind of I just need to make sure I look as normal as possible to everyone. And I know that getting to a place where you can be curious and vulnerable and honest is really hard, but it sounds like it's fruitful. It sounds like you guys are having a good time with it. I feel like even though epilepsy affects so many people and it's been around for quite some time, community feels so new. And we're starting, I think, you guys have all been so generous with your words about how the foundation and how the support groups have been beneficial to you. But even outside of that, I'm curious to know, what do you guys think we need to do as a community to continue to build a robust, supportive space for other people that are diagnosed and, their loved ones?
I think kind of going off what Madison said, people are really nervous, I know, to talk about their epilepsy, especially if they're recently diagnosed or if they had it in public around their peers, and then it kind of makes you clam up. But, and worried that it's going to make people treat them differently. But I've noticed 99 out of 100 times when I've shared my story, or not even just my story, but really casually, that I have seizures or that I have epilepsy, because I have seizures in public quite a bit. People want to learn. They want to know about it. They want to be educated, or they want to know my seizure plan. And if you just talk about it, people are really receptive. It seems daunting, it's scary. It seems like people will treat you differently. But with Madison's example, it ended up for the best because, then she got the tools she needed to succeed at school. It was scary at first because it was embarrassing to have a seizure, but then everyone knew what they need to do and she got the help. And I found that, now my friends are seizure first aid certified and they can support me that way. At work, my coworkers know my seizure plan. And, I was just had my work office party, and some of my coworkers who follow me on Instagram saw that I posted something to the Cameron Boyce Foundation, and they're like, oh, that's really cool. I saw you sit on a board. How'd you get involved with that? I want to learn about that. And once you start talking about it, you see that it's actually not that scary. It can seem daunting at first if you've never spoken about your epilepsy, or you've never shared it with people outside your family or close friends. But it really does end up being beneficial in the end. And I think it is, I don't want to say our duty, but it is important to speak up about it and make it not this big scary thing, because in order to end the stigma, in order to have a community of not just people who have epilepsy, but people who don't, because they're the people who need to support you, you have to talk about it, and you have to make it something normal to talk about and teach them, because they're not going to learn on their own. If they don't have epilepsy, they're not just going to look up what they're supposed to do. You have to be the one to teach them. So I think it's just really important to talk about it.
Yeah, and like you said, me having a seizure at school ultimately did kind of teach more people about it. And then I had people that would come up and be like, hey, so what am I supposed to do if you have a seizure? And I got to inform so many people. Like, I had numerous people tell me things that they thought they were supposed to do that would have ended up hurting me. And, I got to teach them the proper way to care for me. I got to teach them what to do. And I actually ended up having another scare in high school where I had an aura, and I thought that it was going to lead into a seizure. And you would have thought it was like a fire drill for the entire classroom. I mean, we had one person run into the office. We had one person buzzing the office. We had one person trying to lay me down. We had two people going to get water, somebody else going to get other. And it was just like a full breakdown. Like, they all knew what to do at that point, because, I went to a small school. It was the same people that were in those classes in middle school the whole way through. And so, it was just kind of cool to see that, something that, made me feel like you mentioned, made me feel so shameful in 7th grade, ended up in 9th grade, being a really cool moment for me to just kind of see it all pay off.
I would say, for me, as someone who is an ethnic minority, I like to plant myself into spaces or groups where I can raise more awareness. So for things like International Epilepsy Day, I like to make a post in like those ethnic minority groups, and just say, like, this is me, this is who I am. I don't see a lot of people talking about it. And I'll get comments and say, yeah, my son has it, my daughter has it, my sister has it. And I think that's a really nice thing. And I don't know a lot of people of ethnic minority that have epilepsy, and I just want them to speak about it, because I don't hear a lot of people speak about it. And it's quite disheartening for me, because I want to see people like me as well, even though, epilepsy is not a good thing. But I want to see people of all races, all backgrounds speak about it. And that's what I love about the board as well, is that we're so diverse. I can connect to everyone, not just a few people. I can connect to a variety of people. And I think that's why I want to raise awareness and build a stronger community. We already have a good community, but I just want to bring in more people from different places.
Yeah. So I think with me, obviously I'm a teacher, and I think one of the main things that I have to sort of struggle with internally is, do I, expose the children to what's the reality of what's going to happen? Like, what happens if, Miss Price has a seizure? This is what you have to do. And it's really great that I currently work at a very supportive school, that they're like, okay, like, so we have your action plan. We know as staff what to do if this happens. When you feel comfortable enough, or if you feel sick, usually there's other teachers in the room that will help you out, but like being able to inform those children in a really sensitive way. Hey, so like, sometimes Miss Price might feel a bit sick, and, if something happens to Miss Price, these are the steps you need to do. And, I understand there are like, parents out there that don't really want to expose their children to that, because it can be very scary. But I think education from a young age is really pivotal. And I think that informing people in different ways also brings the community together, and that can be done through so many different mediums. Like, I personally, as someone who does live with epilepsy, I find when people make TikToks about epilepsy, as someone has epilepsy themselves, sometimes I find them funny, because I was like, oh yeah, I can relate. So like, using humor to draw awareness and bring awareness to the issues. And like, I have a couple of like favorite TikToks which are just epilepsy related by other epilepsy creators, and it's just that's bringing people together through humor, being like, hey, like, yes, it's really scary for us. And, there are people that don't want to use humor to cope, and that's completely their right. But, it also brings people together to have a laugh. So I feel like, when I walk into uni or when I walk into work, I go, hey guys, it's me. And they're like, are you feeling okay today, Katie? And I'm like, yeah, like I'm all good. Like, you'll know if I'm not, I will complain about it. I'll bite your ear off. Like, I'll talk your ear off and everything. Like, don't worry, guys. But yeah, like, and even just being transparent, like when I go to uni classes, like I'll walk in, go straight to the tutor and be like, hey, what's up? Like, I have epilepsy, and they'll be like, yeah, no worries. Like, I sort of know what to do. And I'll be like, look, if I can feel it coming, I'll usually give you a signal, or I'll unlock my phone so you can call like my emergency contacts, my boyfriend or my parents or something. But yeah, so like, just pushing it more out on social media more. Like, obviously that's what we're doing here at the Cameron Boyce Foundation. We are staged on social media, but being really like consistent with our posts, being really like being consistent with advocacy towards the epilepsy, I think is really important.
That's lovely. And the last question I want to ask you guys today before we close out is, what's some advice you would give to your younger self about community? Serina, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think I would say is that I was quite young and I was at a point where I probably didn't want to learn about it until I was older. And I would just say that just start finding out about it as early as you can. Reach out to those places where you can, wherever is accessible. There are people out there who are going through the exact same things you are. There are families going through it, other people who are going through it, people your age, people older, people who have lost people. And there's always spaces you can learn, things that you'll learn yourself, things that you can inform others about. But yeah, I think I just tell my younger self to just go out there. It's going to be scary at first, but you'll learn. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I would tell my younger self, not to be afraid, not to shut down when the scary things happen, because there are more people around you that are more willing to learn and to help than you realize in the moment. And that, as you grow, you'll learn more knowledge, and you'll find more people that, you can share knowledge with, and that can share their knowledge with you, and that it all gets better as you get older.
My story is a little unique because it took 10 years. And for those whole 10 years, they told me I didn't have epilepsy. But because of that, I felt like it was something I had to bear on my own, because I was like, oh, they don't know what I have. They don't know what I have. I'm so alone in this. Nobody can relate to me. And so I just did so much research by myself from a young age, which is very heavy to do when you're young. And I think it was part my fault for isolating myself, but the situation was also quite hard. And I think if I had just talked to others about what I was going through, even if they couldn't have related completely, because when I did start talking about it, like my uncle, he has seizures, but he doesn't have epilepsy. We talk about it and we bond about it. Whenever we see each other, we're excited to talk about it. And so it's like I could have been doing that and gotten some support there. You don't have to create community with people who have your exactly what you're going through. I could have talked to people who had a chronic illness and found community there, because even though I didn't know I had epilepsy, I was still struggling alone. And if I had just spoken about what I was going through, I could have, found support in other people with other people who were going through something similar, even if it wasn't exactly the same. And I was just so stuck in this, like, no one knows what's wrong with me. I'm so alone. No one can understand, where it's like, they don't have to be going through exactly what you're going through to understand your emotions and your feelings. And I think that's hard as a kid to get that. Like, I think you have to give yourself some grace for when you were a kid. But I think it's just talk about how you're feeling with others, and they'll find some people who feel the same way.
Well, I think the girls wrapped it up perfectly. But for me personally, yeah, it's just, talk to people about it. Just know that, this isn't, I know at the time it feels like it consumes your entire life, but you are destined to be great and to do the greatest things. And I just feel like, at the end of the day, like, yes, you have epilepsy and it does affect many factors in your life, you know, driving, career, social. And, you know, for me, I was just like, you're going to be okay, kid. You know, it's a little bump in the road. And, you know, I try not to let epilepsy define me. And I feel like I'm sort of at a point, you know, and I've worked through it with a therapist. Obviously, now that I'm older, I see a therapist on a regular basis. And I've come to a point where I'm not ashamed that I have epilepsy. I'm not ashamed at all. But I'm also, like, you know, not going to let it control my life. You know, I'm going to try live a fulfilled life as much as I can. And, you know, advice to my younger self would be like, you know, talk to people about it, be open about it. You know, it's, as we said earlier, there's a massive stigma around it. And yes, that can be daunting and scary, but at the end of the day, there's things in life you won't have control over. And unfortunately, living with epilepsy is one of them. But try make light of the things that you can and just slowly hope that everything gets better.
Well, Serina, Katie, Mia, and Madison, thank you guys so much for joining us on the Now What podcast. If you're listening and you enjoy what you heard, check us out on the CameronBoysFoundation.org website. We have resources, we have a bunch of stuff you can talk about. And also, if you love these people and you want to hear more from them and you want to chat with them, check out the Now What support groups on Facebook. We have a young adult one and we have a more general one. So whoever you are, wherever you are, there's plenty to check out. And lastly, we're on Instagram as well. There's a bunch of gabbing happening on there, so you guys might want to jump in as well. But that's it for us. Bye, everyone.